Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to the Say It Sister podcast. We are two friends, midlife women and coaches who talk about all things womanhood, the conversations we have in private, shared with you all, because we know we can't do this life journey thing alone. So we gather every Friday with new episodes relevant to what's showing up in our world. And here in the UK, it feels like winter has been never ending. And now we're starting to get glimmers of spring, and with it comes a new sense of energy. We have been shifting into our dreaming energy, not just imagination and dreaming stuff up, but also putting things into practice with some rituals, with some exercises, and actually taking action because we are feeling the need to create something different, something better, something elevated. It's kind of like this power of awe and, just imagining how things can be different. And actually, it's within all of our gift to make our lives even better. So, just to talk a little bit about awe, because this is just something that's really got me excited right now. It's that emotional state when people feel that they're in the presence of something quite grand that transcends our current frame of reference. For me, it's often sunrises, sunsets, or a bright, sparkling mood, but often it's also being in awe of other people when we see others doing things that we think are unimaginable, whether it's a sacrifice, an act of courage, strength, um, perseverance, and we just look at them and just like, wow, they've really opened my eyes as to what is possible for a human and another human's existence. So somebody I'm in awe of all the time is Karen. Hello, Karen.
Oh, I love this topic. I am just thinking about a woman that I met the weekend who has a farm with all these horses where I went to do a sort of mini retreat. And the woman revealed that she is living with chronic pain. And if you'd have seen her running around this place, it's amazing to me to think that she's actually in chronic pain inside her body. When I watched her, when I saw her intuition and her wisdom and how she understood what the horses were saying, what people's needs were, and how she maneuvered herself, I was like, that's just so inspiring to me because we have a choice, don't we? I mean, we have a choice. Do we show up? Do we not show up? Do we take rest today? Do we push through something? And I think that realigning piece is really, really important. And ultimately, as we always say, Lucy, we know that when the lights need to go on, that we will be there. We know that, it's like lights, camera, action time. No matter what's going on with us, we show up and we move from a deeper place from within ourselves. And that doesn't mean that we ignore what we're experiencing in terms of our bodies or our, life's journey. But we don't allow anything to really stop us unless we really need to take a break. That's the one thing I think that we're both quite good at now, where we'll say, like time out, we'll come back tomorrow or whatever, and we'll continue from there. So I just want to share that because when I think about inspiring people, there are so many people that spring to my mind, and awe is a brilliant word. For me, it's around daily enchantment. That's the work that I've been doing for a couple of weeks now. And when I say it has shifted my energy, it is miraculous for me because it started off planning my 50th, thinking about what I would like to do, and then realizing that it felt impossible. I just thought to myself, I had this vision of myself in Italy wearing a Dolce & Gabbana dress, eating pasta, and I thought, I had this vision, and I just thought, I don't feel like I can make that happen right now in my life. And it took me down a certain path, and I decided that I would, instead of going, I accept that, I decided that I would channel in a different way and that I would start to look at the feeling of that. What was it that I was really going for? And it started off with some Dolce & Gabbana coffee. So got the coffee, drank the coffee, loved the coffee. Then it was looking at, images of dresses online. Then it was like seeing beautiful flowers on my walk and really noticing them. The next thing, I started to get invited to things, and I was like, I would normally say no to that, but I'm going to absolutely say yes. And that's how I ended up with the horses on Saturday. And then I was like, I want to be inspired. I want to hear good news. And so I found this story of this local man called Nathan Newby, who basically saved a load of lives at the local hospital. He was a inpatient. He'd gone outside to get some air, and he noticed there was a man who looked really, really on edge. And he saw the man, and he thought, he looks deeply unhappy. And so he approached him and said, "Hey, are you okay?" They started to have a conversation, and it's all recorded. Somehow it got recorded because he actually ended up calling the police in the end. And so there's this recording of the conversation. This guy told him that he had a self-detonating bomb in his bag, and that his plan was to set the bomb off. Now, it would have killed Nathan, it would have killed the guy, it would have also killed a load of people in the hospital, and they were just outside the maternity ward where I gave birth to my daughter. So, and he spent 3 hours talking to him. And the guy said to him at one point, I realise that I can't do this now. Can you please call the police? Because I can't go through with it, but do it quickly before I change my mind. He said, I've just had enough of everything. And then he said to him, can I have a hug? Which was the bit where I was like, it just took me somewhere. And so he said, of course you can. And like, you can hear them hugging. And this guy saved, I don't know how many people's lives he saved. He also saved his own life. But he said he didn't feel like he had an option but to stay calm. That was the only thing he could do. And he didn't know whether he was going to be killed in the process. And for me, this is the bit where I go, sometimes we walk into situations and we don't know what we're walking into. And we have to make choices as we go down that journey, and we just follow our instincts. And other times we've got more of a heads up, and then we'll go in and approach it in a certain way. But when we don't know what we're walking into and we're met with something like that, I feel like this is the best sort of version of humanity possible, because this was an everyday guy, like he got the highest honour in terms of being a civilian hero, and I'm just in awe of him. So I want to open with that, Lucy. I know you've got a lot to say on this subject, so I'm going to hand back to you.
Yeah, well, I've always been the kind of person that looks at the helpers. And I've raised my children to have that perspective equally, that whenever there's a disaster or something going on, don't look at the disaster and the pain and the trauma. Actually, just look for the people who are actually helping. And they are everywhere. And so I think I am naturally attuned to seeing hope and awesomeness everywhere. And I'm really privileged to be a judge for the Make a Difference Awards for the BBC. And yeah, every year, at least 60, 70 maybe, people are nominated for just being awesome. And there was this one woman that stuck in my mind. She was in her 80s, but ever since she'd moved to that house, every week she'd done a little fundraising thing, and she's got a logbook of every single donation that was ever made, and which charity it was going for. And over her life of like 60 years, she'd managed to raise over £3 million just by selling jams, running a lemonade stall, doing a bit of a bric-a-brac sale, whatever it was. But every week, without fail, there was something. And again, it wasn't in a big city, it was just a little village community. And to me, that is a lifetime of joy. And there were others who have, obviously been through trauma or a death in their family or illness, who would then run marathons or climb mountains and stuff, which are equally awe-inspiring. But I think for me, it's often about those everyday little moments that are almost like unplanned, like you say with this guy. I've got to say, I'm often the person who is called upon in those crises. Everybody knows I'm a first aider. Everybody knows that I'm a scout leader. Everybody knows that I'm really calm under fire. So usually, like the number of times I've been out and about and somebody said, have you got a mental health first aider here? Have you got a first aider here? And I end up being in that moment, being cool, calm, collected. I've had people like fall into busy roads because they're having an epileptic fit, and I've had other people who've fallen into rivers, and I've known what to do. And so again, I think because I have got that perspective of look for the helpers, it naturally makes me a little bit more altruistic myself. And I forget about most of them because they're just, again, they're glimmers, they're little moments that happen, and then you just go amongst your day. And again, it's like every time I leave my house, I've got a post box just on the corner,
Yeah.
and the local well, I don't know, I say local ladies, but it's a group called Knit Knot and Natter, and every 6 weeks they put a new display. And so at the moment we've got Easter chickens on our local one. They do them for Jubilee, they did the Winter Olympics, back to school, and it's just, they for me are those glimmers of joy. There is no reason to do this other than a bit of community, these women get together, and secondly, it's just about giving joy every single day. And it is a daily practice. And like I said at the start, winter has been really long and it's been really hard to be outdoors and going and seeing what's going on in the outside world. So we get stuck to our phones, stuck to the bad news,
Yeah.
and we think the world is a horrible place. But actually, you'd exist in absolute peace and joy if you didn't watch the news and you didn't look at social media and just carried on. I mean,
Yeah.
isn't that the dream for most people? Just go go and run away and live in the countryside with no external factors and just live your own little joyful life.
100%. And I think we can see lots of positive things in the world happening as well. Unfortunately, it gets taken over. I mean, when I saw the Palestine, the mothers from the different sides walking together barefooted in Rome, I was like, and they were sort of talking and holding hands, and I just thought, for me, that's just the most powerful symbol of love and peace that you could possibly have, because ultimately it would be their children that will be going into a war, and here they are, like they on opposing sides, but here they are together as a sign of peace. And for me, that's the power, isn't it, when we have people who are willing to sort of say we should be enemies but we're not. I did a post yesterday on love over hate, and I put it on my Instagram page, and I've had like one guy who's basically a troll I mean, his comments are just ridiculous. I can't even remember what he said. He's put a couple of different comments on a couple of my posts, and when I saw it I was like, isn't that ironic that this is about love but it's pulled in a hater or somebody who has, like, and there were so many things that I kind of could have said back to him, and I just thought, actually, I don't need to say anything
You
back.
don't.
And I'm also not going to delete him. I'll let him stay in the space because it is just more like, wow, like that's really, really interesting to me. It's like sometimes we can be a force for good, we can be positive role models, we can show up, we can do everything, and yet we still attract this sort of like level of, I suppose maybe because we're threatening their position or their stand or their
Happy
sense of
people don't
beliefs.
behave like that.
No,
And
true.
so it just illuminates why our work, our posts, our conversations need to stay on the right side, to tip the balance. Because if
Yeah.
everybody is in hatred or fear or worry, and if collectively the world is feeling that, then it's going to be like an anchor, and we're not going to be able to move forward. So we have to balance it, and actually we have to do even more of it and amplify it. Thankfully, the light is stronger than the darkness. Um, so that we can tilt the balance the other way. We need more positive frequency going around this planet. And if looking at a bumblebee taking its first bit of nectar is the thing, then let that be your joy for the day.
Yeah. What about the people who have personally stepped forward for you in your life? Because I know you're a great like holder of many things for many people, but what about when it's on the other side? Who are your people that have stood for you?
Well, I want to tell you a story, this one story, and it's about a guy called Johnny. Now, I have no idea whether Johnny was a guardian angel, a real fella. I, I don't know because the story is just so bizarre. But basically, when my children were babies, we went on a family holiday to Italy. It was a road trip. We were staying in a family member's house, and after a day trip to an aquarium, we went to the beach, and it was like little tiny pebbles. And somehow the car keys went missing. Their electric fob. Inside the car was our car charger, our phone chargers, the car seat, the push chairs, nappies, everything that we needed, not just for that moment, but to be able to get us out of that that problem. We were also in an area which was incredibly Italian. They did not speak English. It wasn't made for that it wasn't a resort as such. Anyway, we were like, right, we've got no phone, we've got no way of getting anywhere. So we wandered around, and it was lunchtime. Well, it was just after lunchtime, so it was siesta. So all the shops were shut, and we were like, oh my God, what are we going to do with these? Like, me, my ex-husband, two little babies. And we managed to find an internet cafe. So it kind of like ages when this was. Um, and we walked into the internet cafe, managed to log on and get emails to my parents and his parents. But we were staying at his parents' house. And so he might have had a spare key or knew somebody who might be able to get us access, but it was still 5 kilometers into the mountains. We still couldn't get there. Anyway, this English speaking bloke just turned around, Johnny, and said, hey, are you in trouble? We're like, you are the first English speaking person we've seen all holiday, and there you are in our moment of need, sat right behind us in an internet cafe. And he said, I'll tell you what, he said, give my villa's telephone number to your family. Let me take you and your family back to where I'm staying. And he'd got this Porsche. It was a four-seater, but you couldn't really call the seats behind seats. So we all like scrambled in, and he took us to this apartment, and we stayed there, and it was like an Italian family. They cooked for us. They gave us the children beds. And we managed to get ourselves out of that situation. And he then eventually managed to drive us up to the apartment. Somebody came with a spare set of keys. Somebody else lent us their car. Happy days. Anyway, so the next day we drove down to the same house to say thank you so much, and he'd gone.
Wow.
Yeah, it just bizarre.
Mystery.
Yeah. And so I was never able to get a forwarding address, knew where he went, didn't even know his surname. Um, yeah, one of life's mysteries. The house was all boarded up. There was no signs of life there. So I can't explain it. But for me, Johnny will always be one of those people who were just there at the right time, right place, and did everything to make us feel safe and get the help that we needed. It was just phenomenal.
My mum had a similar scenario actually when she was a young woman. She tells me this story, and it's quite similar to that. And she had met my dad, who was Spanish. She was from a little place called Tilsley in Manchester. She was flying out to go and spend time with him. I think she was maybe 17, 18, something like that. And then so her parents were like, we don't want you to go meet him. And she's like, I'm going. So she got the train down to London, got her way to Heathrow, got to the airport, and they'd cancelled all of the flights. And she had no money she had no more money on her. That was it. The money had gone. And so she stood at like standing there, and she was like in tears. And this man came over to her, probably called Johnny, and said, are you okay? And she said, no, I don't know what I'm going to do. Like, it's the flights are not going to be, for whatever, a couple of days or whatever. So I'm going to have to go back to Manchester and then come back down again. And he said, how much money do you need? And she was like, whatever, whatever, whatever. And so he gave her the money. And she then made her way back to Manchester and then went back again whenever the next day flight was, and got on the flight and went to see my dad. So, it's amazing. And she said this man had no intention of ever wanting the money back. He was like, off you go, like, there's the money, and all the rest of it. And she always wonders, like, about him, like, she said he felt like an angel. I'm not saying he was an angel, but like for her, he was an angel, because what would have happened?
There's also stories of people all the time who have helped somebody else with bus fare, or somebody who's been stuck in a supermarket and their cashless phone won't connect, and then they just go into that, abject horror of what do I do?
Yeah.
And because it is terrifying at the moment, we're like, oh my God, what do I do? And there are beautiful human beings everywhere, but because maybe we don't do it enough ourselves and be the helpers, that when it happens, it feels exceptional. Yeah. But actually, you can probably think of many, many people in your past who have been the helpers, and we've got to make it fashionable to be that way again. Because I heard even just on the news this week that they're having to put give the badges out to women on the train station saying baby on board because people don't offer up seats for the elderly or people who are clearly struggling or people who are pregnant. And you're like, what has gone wrong with society? However, if we just all say we're just going to do a pay it forward, an
Yeah.
act of kindness every day. There was one that happened a few years ago in my town, and somebody had discovered whittling, so working with wood, and they were just making little owls out of just random bits of wood, and then just leaving them all over the park for the little kids to pick up. And it gave the children
Oh,
and the parents a moment of joy. And then they started putting them on Facebook. Still don't know to this day who did it, but it was just like for
yeah.
the act of doing something literally just to be altruistic and kind. That to me is just a world full of awe.
Yeah, we've got the two little book libraries just, on my street. There's two boxes that have been painted and everything, and people put their old books in. And like I regularly go there. I basically look in those boxes every single day because I'm obsessed with books. But most of the time I don't take a book. But recently there's been some amazing books in there, and one of them was like real magic. So I'm on my magic searching daily enchantment, and there is a book that is called Real Magic. So I picked that one up. I've started
Perfect.
reading it. It's perfect for right now. It's a really old school book. And I was like, I am going back here. Like I'm going back to some old time. I know I am. And I feel it in my bones. I'm like, it might feel old fashioned. I do not care. There is something really, really important in the works from the past that need to be brought back forward into the present time. So there's that one. And I keep going finding books for my mum, and then she'll come. And I got her Little Women the other day, which is our favourite movie. And I just think, like, what a beautiful thing to do. Whoever's putting the books in, we every now and then we replenish and put more in. And I'm just like, it gives me so much joy. There is a woman that I want to mark here today, a woman called Cindy Cameron, who I met, I think 15 years ago. I went to the Smoky Mountains in America, and I did a workshop. It was a week-long workshop actually called Way of the Warrior, and it was about becoming a warrior of the spirit. And it was a beautiful, beautiful training. And there was this bit which I've mentioned before on the podcast where there's an anger dance that happens, and they've got the big, massive, huge warrior drums, and people are on the drums. And the idea is that you release your anger and you get into like the anger dance. Call it a dance, call it whatever you want to call it. But like there's so much noise, there's so much music. People are like screaming and shouting. People are really letting go. And the first time I did it, I just froze. And I lay on this mat and I was just in tears, and I was thinking, I'm not going to be able to go into that ring and do this. Like there was so many blocks in me that they were just too big. And she came over to me at a certain point and she said, I'll do it with you. And I looked at her and I trusted her, and she took my hand and she just walked alongside me. And I went round the circle quite a few times, and then eventually something shifted, and I started to feel that release, and then I started to express that release. And it was one of the most profound moments of my life. And the year later, I went back on the team helping to facilitate it. And I was in that circle, one of the first people, and I was going for it. And it just felt so liberating, you know what I mean? Not as a performance, but as a
No.
genuine release. Because what I realised was that I had a massive build up of anger, but it had been so suppressed down that releasing the anger in such a ceremonial way, in such a visceral way, was so alien to me that I was like, but once I got over that, and I got over how it was looking and sounding, not that anyone was looking at me, the liberation that came was absolutely incredible. So I want to celebrate Cindy for seeing my struggle, giving me her hand, and for staying with me whilst I did that, because it was vital to my life.
Oh, and again, these people like they stay with us. I'm sure Cindy remembers you, but not in the same profound way, because it does change you every time somebody does something kind or yeah, just thoughtful for somebody. That feeling stays with you. Well, forever. It changes you. It changes your brain chemistry, which is why we've got to if you want to be the change you see in the world, go live it, go be it. I know when I'm like not myself, when I start feeling a little bit bitter, and I catch myself with it, because 20 years ago, I'd have loved to be a little bit of a gossip or, get involved in the like, oh, what's she wearing? What does she think she's doing? That was kind of like where I was. Whereas now, I would feel, even then, actually, I used to feel guilty after
Yeah.
the bitch fest. But even now, just saying the words would just be so horrendous for me. But when I notice that maybe I'm being a little bit bitter, or the words that are coming out of my mouth are on that gnarly side, it's a real cue for me to say what's going on with me in my life.
Yeah.
There's something that I'm not happy about, and it might be that I'm tired, it might be that I'm in a bit of pain, but I have to choose not to go down that path.
Yeah.
Yes, I can have some anger, but you release it in a way, whether it's dancing or howling at the wind or going for a run, body movements, whatever, but you don't project it out on other people,
No.
because then you're just making even more pain and misery. And actually, it's just all about the inner work, isn't it? Noticing it. When are you behaving badly or selfishly, or when are you turning the other cheek, and not being a Nathan? Or when are you actually running into the fires or just holding somebody's hand,
Yeah.
just giving somebody a smile? I mean, there's so often I've been on a train or a bus where I've seen somebody not looking great, you can see that they've got worries on their mind, and I just give them a warm smile, and that's often enough for them just to not feel alone. It
Yeah.
doesn't take much.
Doesn't take much. And as I was walking up here to do this podcast with you, Jeremy Vine was on the radio talking about, women who mustn't dress as lamb.
Ugh.
And it was like a conversation, and my husband said, "Oh, they're talking about, I smiled at him. I came upstairs and I thought, and I nearly shouted downstairs. You wouldn't hear a conversation being had about men looking like tramps or something like that. Do you know what I
No.
mean? Why is it always a woman's image that gets, you know, basically raked up over the coals and dissected. There were women on there saying it doesn't matter. I wear hot pants. I'm at this age. La. But I just thought the fact that this is even a conversation that's being
Yeah,
had
on prime time
on
radio.
primetime radio tells me everything about men and women. So it's like the difference is there. And I just thought I actually have no interest in listening to that conversation. Now, that's not where I want to put my time and my energy. I want to hear different types of conversations, and I'll be dialing into different types of conversations. Hence why I'm happy to be here on this podcast with you today, because that's what was going on downstairs. I
Yeah,
was
come
just
come come
like,
here. Let's talk about dreamness and happiness and
yeah,
joy
and
and
I
kind
just
people.
I just think there's a point when we have to sort of maybe call it out a little bit and say, that's interesting how it's always about the women, and just educate. And then
Mm.
there's like the point of going, just disconnect, like disconnect from it. Don't waste your energy. Don't even put your lens into that space, because in putting our sort of like, if we sort of turn our gaze that way, we're kind of in the space of it as opposed to
Yeah,
just
we're giving it
saying,
attention.
it's going to happen anyway.
Mm.
Let them have that conversation. I'm not part of it, and I'm going to go and have another conversation. And
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 just wear
this
the damn clothes that you want to wear, the ones that make you
exactly,
feel
and
joyful.
exactly, and we want to create, a world where that alternative option is available, where women can go, yeah, that's a conversation that's happening, and I need to be aware of that one. I don't need to be aware of that one. I couldn't care less about that one. But this is the conversation that I'm having, and let's continue with this really brilliant conversation. So I think for me, I'm feeling much more inspired. I'm feeling much more um, inspired by the options that we have where we can make different choices. Let's talk about our days of dreaming that we did last week.
Yes.
It was originally 5 days of dreaming, but I've added an extra day in because I realised that we need a day of rest. So
Yes.
I was like, the five has now changed to 6 days of dreaming. And we did this on Instagram. We did it on LinkedIn. You'll be able to go to our Wise Women Lead pages and Say It Sister pages and our personal pages, and you'll be able to find out about what we did. But it was beautiful because me and Lucy collaborated. We did, the inner work that would need to happen for us to not just acknowledge our dreams, but for us to really step into our dreams. We did the work ourselves personally, and then we looked at what would need to happen, outwards as well. So it was like inside, internal work, and then the work that we sort of like move into as we move out of our inner world, inner landscape, to make things real, to create. Anything you want to add to that, Lucy?
No, other than, because you've summed it up beautifully. I just want to add that as I was going through the steps myself, it was really nice because there was one kind of like standalone one which was about trusting yourself and telling yourself the truth. So we had the conscious dreaming up of how we want the world to be and to actually name it. And that is really actually very difficult. If I was just to say to you, what's your dreams? Like, and to the listeners as well, what are your dreams? Most of you are going to find it pretty difficult first off because we don't
Yeah.
spend that time in dreaming, we spend that time in doing. And so once you've got that clear, then we went into understanding, well, what's your strategy? What are the risks? What are the challenges? And how are you going to overcome them? So really getting used to hearing your saboteurs and all of the naysayers and saying, right, I'm still ready for you. I know you're coming. And then there was the one about, yeah, speaking your truth, reconnecting back to your values. Why does this matter to you? And I think even though I know all this stuff as a woman, my first thought is still about everybody else that I love. So it's like, how will it impact them? What will they think? How can will they accommodate this thing that I plan to do? Rather than just saying, but actually, if it matters enough to me, they will fall in. They will be absolutely fine. So that was a really good one. And then it was about finding the choice. So now you know what you want to do, how you're going to do it, knowing your absolute truth. Now you have a choice to make. Are
Yeah.
you going to do it? And standing at that crossroads and say, you're going to go left or you're going to go right? You're going to say yes or you're going to say no. And that was like really powerful.
Yeah, and
And the
there's some,
next thing
I
then
think
is
sometimes
do
there's some,
it.
yeah, sometimes there is the thing about we might have a dream that's really big. It might be small, but it feels really big, you know? And we've got this dream. It's like a bit like me and the sort of like turning 50 in the Italian adventure that I wanted to go on. You know, there was this, the dream is here, yet there are a series of micro choices that we can make that take us closer to that dream. And
Absolutely.
so sometimes it can feel like and actually we should feel excited about our dreams and we should feel a level of fear about our dreams. If we don't feel some sort of energetic response from within the body, it's not the dream. And that's what we need to listen to. It's like, is there enough juice inside my body right now, like enough of like the movement going on that tells me that this is important to me? And then from there, once we've worked through the bits that you said, like we can take a series of little tiny baby macro choices and steps, but each step is leading us in a certain direction. And that might be, like saying no, it might be saying yes. It depends, what we're going for. But there is a series ultimately. For me, it's like I say yes to that, and then something else opens up over here, and I say yes to that, and then I say yes to that. And before you know it, sometimes you're at the dream and you're like, I've actually got there. Or you get
Absolutely.
a feeling of what you were going for and you go, I saw myself in Italy, but I'm finding myself somewhere totally different to Italy. But the feeling of it is so wonderful that it's even better than. Like there's something in the Akashic Records. It's like, we get into the space, we start to feel abundant, we start to dream on a really elevated level, and then we start to ask for what we want. And there's a line that's my favorite line ever. That's like, I accept all of this, or better than. Because
Yeah.
sometimes the dream that we actually get is better than what we imagined. And time tells us that, when you look back and you go, I was there, I was there, I was there, like what an amazing thing. And the actions are sometimes super easy and sometimes more challenging than that. So that I just
And
wanted to share.
sometimes and what I've learned over my lifetime is when you dream something up today, you're doing it from your own frame of reference of today. And actually, 5 years from now, you'll still have the same dream, but there'll be new knowledge and new information that wasn't even possible. So it almost expands the dream. And I'll give you a really very quick example of this before we wrap up. When we did our coach training together all those years ago, we had to write a story of our life or something and tell it as a story. And then it got me to thinking about how would the other chapters unfold. And my 50s were always about absolute freedom for me. And the plan was that I would go and travel. I'd go and live abroad and I'd go on this wild adventure. Now I'm really approaching it. I've got my dogs, I've got my cat, my children are pretty much self-sufficient, but I don't want to go and live abroad for a year. But now we have something called nomad living. We have Airbnbs and things like that. So I actually can go and live abroad for a month, come back, and then go to another place and another place and another place. So it feels almost even more exciting now, because now I'm like, oh, I don't have to just say I'm going to go to that continent. I can do all of them. And it's, for me, it's really exciting. It looks different to what I dreamt it up 10 years ago, but it's even better. But dreaming, it takes us all off into a giddy space, but now we have to come to the close. So I'm going to hand over to you, Karen, just to end this beautiful conversation.
Well, we're inviting you to start dreaming. If you haven't already, start dreaming. If you're dreaming with us, keep dreaming. We want you to raise your vibration, to reset your energy, and to get clear on your intentions. The message is simple. If the world feels dark, switch on the lights. There's no time for stuckness right now. It's a time for you to reconnect for yourselves, for your communities, and for the world you want to live in, because you do have a say. Are you ready to join us? We'll see you soon.